So let's do the second half of chapter 15 on competency-based pay. So how do we link competencies to pay? So in the previous video, we talked about determining the competencies and then how do you assess those competencies toward the end of the first video. Well, we can do kind of two approaches. One is that we can have levels where people have different levels of the competency and they get paid based on what level they're at. This makes a lot of sense, especially if you're doing depth instead of breadth for your competency. So people can go in depth on a competency and become kind of an expert at a specific task or skill that they need to have in the workplace. You can also do a continuum approach where you have competency zones, and then people can go on a continuum going up and down, well, really up in those competency zones. If you do that, you can have broad banding and then have competency zones within the broad bands. And then movement within the zones is competent as competency increases. Again, this could be a competency in terms of breadth, like you've learned lots of different things. It could also be a competency in terms of depth as well, if you wanted to do it that way. Your pricing is a little more difficult. It's harder to figure out when you have a competency-based system how to pay people versus a job-based system, which is what we have been looking at up till this week. Mostly because the market data we get is for jobs specifically. It's not for the competencies that are related to those jobs. But you can use salary survey data to figure out highest and lowest competencies because there are going to be different competencies that are required for the tasks in different jobs. So this is where having a job analysis and then using things like tools like ONET, for example, to figure out what those competencies are to do those specific tasks can help you kind of create a hierarchy with how much you should be paying for the different highest and lowest competencies based on the jobs and the job evaluation that you have in which those competencies are in the jobs. So let's look at some specific pay systems. A professional pay system, I think, is one that a lot of you will be familiar with or that you will be going into when you graduate from college. Some of you are already in it, potentially based on either your internships, the jobs you're currently in, or some of you actually already have a lot of professional experience and you may be adding to that experience right now. Professional jobs require applications of learned knowledge. So the idea is that you're bringing in competencies from, usually it's education of some sort, but it could also be lots of experience within an industry. Professionals are independent, knowledge-focused workers. They're not really, supervisors oversee them, but supervisors' job is to help professionals get their work done by kind of getting rid of obstacles and challenges, and then helping to motivate those professionals through things like determining pay for performance and that sort of thing. So the career pattern for professionals is that they get higher pay at entry because they're coming in with these competencies. They get rapid early growth because they're able to hopefully apply those competencies into their jobs in their first few years of their career, but that the pay flattens out over time. And the idea here is that, and you can think about this for maybe doctors, depending on how much you know about doctors. When they first get out of college, theoretically, this is kind of the height of their knowledge in the sense that they know the latest techniques and the latest research because they were just in college. They were just in medical school. They've been studying this for several years with professors whose job is to keep up on what is the latest within that profession. But then once you're working as a doctor, you may not have as much time to look over that research, or you may not be updating your skills as much because you're doing kind of the same work every day and you're just trying to keep up with the number of patients you have. And so the maturity curve is showing that when you first start, you are kind of at the height of knowledge at that point in time. And then over time, you may not have the time to keep that knowledge up in the sense that you're on kind of cutting edge, but you keep your knowledge up to be able to do your job well and to improve your job. I'm trying to think of some specific examples that you might know from from the medical field. There are going to be certain kinds of surgeries, for example, that people who just got out of school and just finished their residency might have learned from like the top person in the world or the top team in the world that knows how to do that. And then they do it in their own job. But, 20 or 30 years into their career, that may not be the cutting edge surgery anymore, but they don't have time to go back and learn from the best in the industry at the newest cutting edge surgery. And so they continue to do what they do because it works for their patients, but it just may not be kind of top of the line 20 or 30 years into their career. I already mentioned teacher pay schedules. In chapter 13, I just wanted to show you a picture of what these look like. I pulled this from Google. This is the Chicago Public Schools. This is actually one of the years I was working there. This is one of the school districts I worked in. This is their step and lanes approach. This is also called sometimes step and ladder approach. So the steps are the number of years that us teachers in the school district, and then the lanes are the things going horizontally. And here the lanes are related to the amount of education that the teacher has. So you will go up incrementally every single year. Your pay will go up. It's, as you can see, it's not a lot though. It's only $1,000 many times. There's a few times where it goes up several $1,000s, and those increments will get bigger as you go on, but you have to stay in a school district for decades potentially to max out in terms of that experience. One way that a lot of teachers make money faster is getting a master's degree, or you can see that credit hours also matter because those credit hours can be related to certifications that you get on top of a master's degree, all the way up until a doctorate degree. So your lowest paid worker is someone who's in their first year who just finished their bachelor's degree. In 2013, they were getting paid $49,660. And then your highest paid employees should be people with doctorate degrees. On this chart, 16 years. Often these charts go longer than that, but you can max out at 20 or 25 years, for example. And on this one, they're making 20 or $94,666 dollars. This rewards specific teaching skills, knowledge based, for example, based on what degrees they have. Those degrees also determine what things they can do. So if you have a master's degree, you can, for example, train other teachers. You may also have certifications in specific areas like math or something where a higher level of training might get you into classrooms. A really good example of this that many of you have probably experienced is a lot of teachers who teach AP classes in high school have master's degrees in the areas they're teaching AP classes. And part of that is because that's the level of knowledge they need to teach those classes. But another is that in colleges, if you haven't realized this yet, for example, in the College of Business, to even teach in the College of Business, you have to have a master's degree. You often can't teach with a bachelor's unless we're desperate for someone in a specific position. But with a master's degree, our certification allows our certifying body allows those people to teach undergrads and bachelor's programs. You can't teach master's level. You can't teach the level you have the degree in. But that same idea would apply in high schools where people are teaching AP classes to get college credit. You need the master's degree to be one kind of degree above the class you're teaching. For teachers, there's also the National Board Certification. That is a training and assessment module that's like it's a whole certification program. It's a very big deal and it's actually quite difficult to get through. But if you have teachers who are national board certification, this is a national recognition. And they get paid more because it's a competency. It's showing that they have a lot of competencies in the classroom that are very specific. These teachers also often become trainers for other teachers because they now have a national kind of certification that's recognized in lots of different school districts, and also for the national board, which is a whole certifying agency. And then you can do market-based adjustments for high demand disciplines. So things like math or science, especially at the high school level, might get paid more than what this schedule shows. You also may have, like in this school district, they really needed people who worked with special education programs, and they would pay more if you had that kind of certification. So a lot of school districts can do that as well to change the pay. You also can make a skill-based pay. This is a competency-based pay, but for specific kinds of jobs. This links your pay to the skills that you've acquired and applied. Often, skill-based pay is often kind of for manufacturing, whereas competency-based pay may be for like professionals, for example, but they're really the same thing. So you could call one or the other, you could call your system one or the other depending on what you wanted to do. For skill-based pay, you have to determine what skills you're going to require and then provide training and certification for people to learn these skills. Usually with a skill-based system, that training and certification is in-house. It could be out of the organization, but the idea is that the organization has this training available and people can take the training and do the certification whenever they would like. This also gives the employee a lot of flexibility, then a lot of ability to determine what their pay is by doing the training and certification for lots of different skills. Um, you can also put skills into skill blocks then and pay people for completing entire skill blocks where they might be skills that are related to specific tasks, or they might be going in depth into some of the skills that they're learning. In a skill-based system, employees have a lot of, they get to choose what skills they want to learn, and get certified in, and then they can see how their pay will increase as they're learning those skills. So there's a lot of benefits for employees because it helps them determine their own pay rather than kind of being stuck at entry-level pay. Um, for a long time, especially if you think like manufacturing, where there may be specific skills that you can learn that help you learn to do different jobs or different tasks on the floor. But without having a skill-based pay system, you may not be able to learn those skills to learn how to do other things. For organizations, this is beneficial because you have employees who can do lots of different skills and they can do lots of different tasks. So if someone is on vacation, for example, or you are understaffed, you can move people around if they have the skills that are needed to do the tasks that need to be covered. This also means that organizations don't need as many employees then many times because if their employees have lots of different skills, they can pick and choose who does what because the employees become interchangeable in terms of the tasks that they can do because they're highly skilled. It improves the competency of the employees because as you learn more skills, you also become very proficient at the skills that you already learned, and you can start putting those skills together to see how the work that gets done in that particular workplace is done through these different skills. People with lots of skills can then support teams, and they often can support new technology because they already have skills that will help them learn that new technology. And then you can also update your skill-based pay and system if new technology is introduced into your workplace. And then it increases employee involvement in their own careers and their own pay, and determining what their pay is going to be. However, as you can imagine, there's a lot of challenges with skill-based pay. Just like competency-based pay, it has high implementation costs because you have to determine what those skills are. You have to like create the training and the certifications, and then someone has to actually put that system in place and keep monitoring the system. It can be difficult to control costs because employees have the flexibility to choose which skills they're going to learn and which ones they're going to get certified in. So you could have all of your employees get certified in all of the skills that you have available, in which case you've maximized pay. They maximize their own pay, but it also means it's the highest cost for you because now everyone has all the skills. Market pricing can be very difficult with skill-based pay, again, because the market pay information is based on job roles and not skills. There can be potential misalignment with other compensation systems. So a skill-based pay system can often be on top of a job-based pay system, but that can be really difficult if you have people who are learning skills for other people's job roles or the tasks in their job roles. How do you make sure that their pay is equitable or fair in the organization when you have two different things going on and people getting different kinds of pay for different reasons? Training investment may become obsolete in the sense that you've trained people to do skills that become not needed anymore, or the tasks have changed so much that that training is not useful. So that means that you've invested in training that's not helpful now for the skills that people have on the floor. And then skills may be paid, but used very infrequently. This could be very helpful if you have some jobs where they're just not done frequently, or if you have an opening for something that's a very high skilled job and you don't have someone to fill it, that can be very useful. But it does mean in the meantime that people may have these skills and they're not using them. And if you don't use a skill, you may also lose the ability to use that skill well, in which case you may have to keep doing some retraining and recertifying to show that people still have these skills, even if they're not using them very frequently.